very much to Cooper Parry for inviting me here today. It's the second time I've done this event, so delighted to be back again. And I have to say, I think when I first started thinking about planning this session a few weeks ago, I would probably have been thinking about saying slightly different things to those things that I am going to say today. And that, of course, is in no small part due to the general election. And where it leaves us is that we have even less information at the moment than we normally would at this time of year. And that's because there's a period of pre-election sensitivity, it's called. And during that time, I used to call it Purdah as well, heard less about this time. And during that time, for anyone that's not aware of it, so our colleagues in DFE and ESFA cannot transact any government business that would require ministerial sign-off. So what that means for us in this room particularly is that we don't have the National Funding Formula indicative amounts for 25-26, we don't have an STRB recommendation, and we don't have the rates for university and free school meals for 24-25, which we might have expected by now. So the reason for that is that there has not been a fiscal event that is going to allow anyone to say what the National Funding Formula indicative rates are going to look like for 25-26. And that's particularly unfortunate, I think, in this year, because we are also at the end of a spending review period. So there's a lot got to happen in the next few months. I think the new Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has been very clear that she's not going to do an emergency budget. She wants to work in response to OBR figures, and I think you'll all have heard this, that recently that the OBR 100 days planning is now underway. So I think that puts a spending review probably in around October, probably only for a single year, but who knows, we might get a multi-year spending review, we just don't know. So in terms of funding, I thought all I can do really is a very quick recap of where we are in 24-25. You will know all of this, so I'm not going to spend time going through this. What I do want to focus on particularly is the high needs, so the tile in the middle, and 16-19 funding, where there are one or two changes, and I think things that you just need to be aware of. I'm not going to look at NFF at all, because you'll know this already, and those budgets are well underway planning. So in terms of high needs, we know that is a significant problem. We are hoping that the new government are going to appreciate that and do something about it. The reason I'm focusing on it, of course, is because it impacts on all of us, regardless of whether we're supporting special schools or not. Anyone here from special school or alternative provision? Okay, good. So please feel free when we come to Q&A to challenge or ask, or anything we need to be asking that we're not already thinking about will be really helpful. Thank you. So what we know is, of course, that there's huge deficits around the country. We know that around 40 local authorities are now involved in the Safety Valve programme, which was initially designed to help local authorities pay off their deficit, reduce their deficit. But the downside of that, of course, is that it means that transfers between schools block and high needs block are continuing at a rate that higher than we would like to see. And therefore it's having an impact on schools block funding as well. We're also very frustrated that additional money that's going into those safety valve agreements is not getting to the front line, so it's not getting to you in your schools. And while the high needs block funding formula continues to target money at local authorities rather than direct to providers, that does nothing to help redress the balance of sort of historic differences in top-up funding and banding systems, etc. So a lot of challenges there which we really hopefully need to tackle. And there's this thing about statutory override, which again, these deficits can sit outside can sit outside the local authority accounts for another couple of years. And at that point, those deficits are going to be included in that. So it looks likely that probably that statutory override permission will have to carry on, because we really don't think that those deficits are going to be reduced. So that high needs situation in a nutshell, dire, I think would be summed up in one word. And in terms of 16 to 19, just want to draw your attention to changes to the condition of funding for English and Maths for 24-25, which say that you are now expected to deliver 3 and 4 hours respectively in English and Maths to each pupil that requires a resit. And we're approaching a period of zero tolerance there, which means that you are likely to have you're losing funding if you cannot demonstrate that you've delivered on these conditions of funding. We think that's really a real challenge. In fact, we know it's a challenge. The colleges sector particularly, it's a challenge, but in 16 to 19 in schools too, in sixth forms, it's going to be a real challenge to get that 3 to 4 hours English and Maths additional tutoring. Not least because there just aren't the maths teachers, for example, out there to deliver that. So there's recruitment on top of all of that. But you do need to bear that in mind because as things stand, there will be a zero tolerance it'll begin in 24-25 academic year this is, and then the following year that zero tolerance is scheduled to be implemented. So who knows whether there'll be changes to that. Also 16 to 19, we're hoping to hear something from the new government about the defunding of BTECs, but we haven't heard anything yet. Okay, so it's a quick run through of 24-25. In terms of other DfE grants, again, most of this you will be very familiar with, so people premium rates, university and preschool meal rates, not published for 24-25. All you can do is plan using the current rates. And primary P in sports, again, we haven't got the rates for 24-25, but we should have those by now, I think, but we'll obviously keep track of those. In terms of teachers pay additional grant, all you need to know is it's continuing to be a grant in this funding year, 24-25. After that, we expect it to be rolled into the national funding formula. Similarly, teachers pay the TPEG, very snappy. Teachers Pension Employer Contribution Grant, I think. I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see what I've written at the bottom. You'll have had the first round of that. We know that for some, there have been some challenges in making the additional cost marry up with the grant that you are likely to receive. I don't know if there's anyone in this room that has, okay. I can tell you that we've been feeding that information back to our colleagues at DfE, and what it seems to be is something around the way that they've applied the money that's available to the formula. And it looks as if the weighting for free school meals is a little bit heavy. So those schools where there are much lower proportions of free school meals tend to be the ones where the pension grant is not meeting the additional costs. So what really probably needs tweaking is the formula. So when this is rolled in to the NFF, how that formula is tweaked. So we'll keep talking about that. But I'd be really interested if anyone at any of the networking sessions wants to share any information. Particularly now we've got information about the 16 to 19 elements, because that's just an addition to the existing grant. And I know 1 or 2 of our members have been saying, well, hang on a minute, this is, it just doesn't seem to stack up at all. But others have said, no, this is fine, we're going to be just about all right. Until, of course, we get the pay recommendations for 24-25, and then we'll have to relook and see where we are there. So lots to think about on TPEG, but we're getting a conditional grant, and whilst DfE cannot confirm that we'll get it from 25-26, and that's because of the spending review period issue, it is reasonable to assume that it will continue to be available to us, I think. So I would be putting that in my assumptions. Okay, I'm not going to spend any more time on funding because we know so little about what's happening next. Academy's budget forecast return, again, you'll be well into the weeds of this by now. Just a reminder about when the deadline for submission is, so 29th of August. I think what we have noticed is that ESFA have become more supportive of this process over the last few years, and I know that when there are changes to it, they're quite good at running sessions, and I think there's a dial-in session weekly over the summer period. So if anybody has any queries on this as you're putting it together, just Google or look on the Academy's budget forecast return part of the website, and it will tell you when these dial-in sessions are that ESFA are running to offer support. So in terms of how I can support you. Because of the timing, you're well into 24, 25 anyway. So I think all I can do is try and help you frame the conversations as you navigate your way through this process. And I think there are two things that are really important. It feels as if there's a lot more uncertainty, and there probably is more than usual, but there's always uncertainty about year 2 and 3. That is not new. It's always there because we always know less. It gets more flaky as years go into the future. And the second thing is that the approach is consistent, or I think should be consistent. So it's a team approach. It requires group think. It requires knowledge from all aspects of across the trust. So you can't do it on your own. And it requires a consistent approach to answering some of these questions that I've put. These are conversation starters, answer some of these. So what are the outcomes that will be most important for strategic success? I can't read this because I've got my glasses on. Given these priorities, where should our resources grow? And then how do we evaluate those? What sort of options appraisal process, and what is our success criteria? That is a constant process that will apply every year. Even if we have a huge windfall and we have all the money that we ask for, that same approach will take place. And hopefully that will sort of add some stability to what is an incredibly difficult and sometimes lonely place to be, I think, in this process. And out of that uncertainty, you need to extract this fine line of financial precision and strategic success. So just very few tips. These are reminders. I'm guessing you're pretty familiar with all of these, really, about how to apply this consistent process. Always look backwards and forwards. So you're looking at internal controls. You're testing your internal controls to make sure they're working for you and they're efficient. You'll be looking at, obviously, staff deployment. You'll be looking at curriculum viability. Non-essential expense. For me, that's a simple question. For every spending decision that's made, you need to be able to answer this question. Is it going to have a positive and demonstrable impact on teaching and learning? And is it keeping us on the right side of the law? If you can't answer yes to both of those, why is that? Why are you spending it? And that can sometimes be helpful in breaking through some of those conversations. Total cost of ownership. So this is really about reminding some of your colleagues outside the finance team that are but have budget responsibility and are looking at putting bids together for IT equipment or curriculum resource or new sports equipment, for example, to make sure they're aware of this total cost of ownership piece. So what is the longer term impact on your budget? Assumptions, I'll talk a little bit more about assumptions on the next slide, so I won't, but basically that's the thing, shared responsibility, make sure they're evidenced and well articulated. We're saying this because of this, we're going to review it then because we think we'll have more information. And make sure, again, it's well recorded. Work smarter, not harder, so just make use of any tools and toolkits that you've got. View My Financial Insights is a good one. Embedding ICFP is also a very valuable exercise to undertake. Lengthy to start with, but really useful going forward. So in terms of aligning financial curriculum planning cycles, this is more, I think this is going to be more use to you probably when you do this next time. I've included it because I think it's a useful approach and it adds structure. But it's basically about making sure that the financial cycle and the curriculum cycle meet whenever they can so that one informs the other sensibly. And it can be as simple as scheduling your trust board meetings at a time that meets financial deadlines in good time, for example, so you're not chasing your tail. Not going to go through this, you'll get this, colleagues will get the slides, won't they? Yeah. So it's just perhaps a way of knowing when to bring curriculum leads and finance leads together and who needs to get what information. Okay, so let's spend a little bit more time on assumptions. So here we go. So these are some of the key assumptions that you're having to make. And the difficulties behind them. So, in terms of teachers' pay, we have no STRB recommendation at the moment. We know that the new government are aware that it is absolutely urgent. In almost, if any of you have watched any of the webinars with organisations like Institute for Government, or if you've listened to ministers speaking, they will almost always start with, we know that there are urgent things such as public sector pay. And then they usually say something about Thames Water as well, which I don't understand that bit, but it's not in my remit, so I don't have to. So we know they're working on this, but we still don't know when it's going to happen, unfortunately. DfE evidence vague. By that I'm referring to the school cost technical note, which usually gives us an indication of what government think we can afford within our existing budgets. I think they haven't come out and said this explicitly, but in conversations that we've had, there seems to be a thinking that there's an affordability window of about 2%. That's based on national averages of income and expenditure. But that's not me saying that's what it's going to be, because I don't know, but that I've heard that conversation looking at the DfE cost, the school cost technical note. So all you can do is model multiple scenarios and keep revisiting as more information becomes available. Support staff pay, we know what the full and final offer is. I don't think it's been ratified yet. I've been on leave for a few days, so if something's happened that I haven't heard of, somebody nod at me, no. So that's the best that we know. And in terms of non-pay elements, you just need to use the best information available to you. So keep checking what the OBR is saying and the Treasury are saying about inflation, etc. So I wish I could give you more concrete information, but what I say, what I'm trying to do is help you frame the narrative of this and help, in the conversations that you're having with your trust board. This is what we're looking at. This is why. This is the best information that anybody has got. Because there's nothing worse than being forced to make an assumption that's not grounded, because it'll come back to bite you in the end. So please try and avoid that and don't get any pressure into them. A few reminders. So recovery premium, we won't be getting recovery premium after this academic year. You must make sure that you've got plans to spend it by the end of this academic year. Similarly, primary PE and sports, there's a new digital tool being made available. The most encouraging thing about this digital tool is that it says somewhere in it, we'll use information from this to inform future policy. So that says to me that primary PE and sports premium is going to continue in some way. And we hadn't had that confirmation before. The digital tool is voluntary, by the way. And 16 to 19 tuition fund, for those of you that get that, you can look out for your return form, digital return form. National Tutoring Programme, I made a bigger point of this because I've worked with too many colleagues who have had to go to appeal to keep their NTP funding, even though they have done everything right as far as they're concerned with the year-end statement. And I'm glad to say that we've had some very positive results, but it's things like, the email addresses are not correct, or the email addresses are going into some sort of junk or going into an abyss because the person that's doing the work is not the person that's getting the emails. So it's just a plea. Make sure that you're putting yourselves in the best position. I had a chat with DfE the other day, and they said these are all the emails that they will use and how they will use them. Just make sure that yours are saying the right things and that they're current. And there's some timelines up there, dates, because they've been published, but I don't think they've been advertised very well. Again, pre-election stuff, I guess, but that's what the programme's going to be. So, very quickly, if I've got time, which I think I have, got a couple of minutes, what happens now? Decisions on public sector pay has got to be urgent. We know that is the case. There's King's Speech next week. That will be an opportunity to establish elements of the manifesto that require legislative space, and it's probably going to include things that would be fairly straightforward to do in a fairly short period of time. I'm not quite sure what those are. One of them could be the VAT plan on private schools, but we don't know. But they're the sorts of things that probably could likely be in it because it's not going to be difficult legislatively. On that, by the way, we don't have any understanding yet of the timeline, that in terms of is it going to be in one fell swoop or will it be introduced over time. So there's lots of detail. I don't know if anyone else in the room has got There's lots of details still to be ironed out on those things. None of this can happen quickly. Re-establishing select committees will happen, and then over the summer, probably into the autumn. And then the spending review, which I talked about, which is the crucial thing as far as we're concerned. We must have a spending review in autumn. I'm expecting that Shelley's going to wave at me any minute, so I'm going to, any time, this is just my, if I've got time things now. These are the challenges that we think we've got to meet. I say we, this was from a presentation that IFS did for Pastoral Council, and most of it comes from the report you see there. Falling pupil roles is a huge one, but so are rising costs rising quicker than the increases in funding. As a comparison, this is obviously what ASCL are doing now. Pre-election, we put forward our 10 key asks. I've made the top 6 a bit bigger, so you can see what we think were our absolute key when we had to sort of nail our colours to the mast. We are reasonably encouraged that we have seen reference to these types of things in the new government's manifesto. Obviously, there was an awful lot of compare and contrast before last Thursday. And this is just lifted from the Labour manifesto. And on the right-hand side there, they're comments that we picked up from think tanks pre-election, so that they were, from lots of the conversations we were having. But from my perspective as a funding specialist, there is a clear lack of commitment, and this wasn't just this it wasn't the Labour Party, it's virtually across the board, a clear lack of commitment and specific information about funding both revenue and capital. So we really need to be hot on our tails for that. I'm going to stop now. And that's our ministerial team, as far as we know. It is changing every day, which is why I sent this to Shelley after business hours. So thank you again for getting this in. It was the most up to date. Portfolios yet to be fully determined. We also know Kevin Collins has now been added to the team, obviously not as a minister, to the board. So we think that's a positive thing to look at school standards, and we'll keep looking, watch with interest for where those portfolios end. And I really am going to stop now. Thank you very much for listening.